Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Heathen Talk. I am your host, Lauren. With me, as always, is Thorin. And filling in tonight for Josh is our executive producer, Toby. We are here this week. We're going to be talking about a rather controversial subject, one that's likely going to cause some fighting and some disagreement and critique, and we're okay with that. And that is UPG, Unverified Personal Gnosis. Before we get started, though, do want to remind you guys, if you want to argue with us about this, you can always find us on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. Marc loves it. Our producer loves it when you harass him on Instagram. And pretty much everywhere else that's social media-ish. All the links for all that, though, are over on our website, which is heathentalk.com, where you can also find our swag. And, hey, if you like what you're hearing, or if you just really want to hear us argue more, go drop a couple of bucks in the Patreon and help keep the network going. So, with that, we have a tradition where we toast someone, so I'm going to toss it over to Thorin for that.
Yes, as you know, we always try to toast somebody who is out there doing important things in the real world for heathens, and today's is definitely no exception. Many of you listening have met this person. She was not only at Cascadia Moot, she was extremely important in making Cascadia Moot happen. Beyond that, she does a lot of work locally, quietly, behind the scenes, not taking a lot of glory, trying to actually make regional Cascadian heathenry happen. And she's got even more projects in the works, things that I'm not going to talk about because I don't think she's necessarily talking about them publicly. And for those of you who haven't figured out yet, I'm talking about Kate Kamacho. She was the lady of our hall at Cascadia Moot, and I don't think that anybody who was present can say that she did anything short of making that whole event from Sumble and everything else perfect. I've honestly been to a lot of heathen events. I've never seen anybody perform better than she did. I think we would have had a hard time doing it without her. What do you think, Toby?
I think she was absolutely central to the success of the event. I think I think there's a lot of potential in Kate. She's a wonderful young lady. I can't wait to see what she does. I have absolutely no reservation in raising a glass and saying salute to her. So, to Kate.
To Kate.
To Kate.
So, speaking of traditions, Lauren, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking another one of the lovely Sonoma ciders, which I will be drinking because for some reason I forgot to open mine. So I'll be drinking that in just a second as soon as there's my bottle opener. I'm still drinking the pulley, which is the absinthe style, which is really, it's a dry, very anise, it's got that lovely anise kind of back note. I love it. It's really good. I'm going to go get a different one this weekend and try something slightly different from the same company because they have 4 or 5 different styles here locally.
Right on. Toby?
I am drinking a sour apple saison from Epic Brewing. It's not bad. It's a good saison. It's got a little bit of that sour note to it that it's a little more sour than I would expect a sour or a saison to be. I guess that's why they call it the sour style. I actually picked this up at the brewery in Salt Lake City a couple of months ago, and it's nice and crisp. It's got a good apple flavor. I'm not a huge fan of sours, so it's not really doing it for me, but it's tasty.
I might have to try it. I am a huge fan of sours. So,
what are you drinking, Thorin?
I am drinking a beer from Puyallup River Brewing, a local beer, a pineapple ghost pepper cream ale. Now, for those of you out there that are familiar with pepper beers, that you drink a pepper beer, and sometimes the pepper is, the burn's not really there at all, but most of the time it's just a real slow build. Not this one. This one just punches you in the throat right away from the first sip. And I'm not at all disappointed with that. The pineapple part's really kind of not there, but that's not really what this beer is about, I don't think. It's pretty good, but I mean, basically what it comes off as is a really basic pale ale with a lot of spice to it, and I'm not disappointed for what it is.
So what you're saying is this one is going to punch you in the face and take your lunch money.
A little bit, the second and third drink's not quite as harsh as that first one, but that first one really just gets you.
I do want to, before we move into our topic, I do want to make note of a couple of events coming up. Our friend Kate is going to be hosting the Heathen Camp at the Cascadian Northwest Arts and Music Festival in Granite Falls. That's going to be the 21st to the 24th of July. It's going to be really awesome because it's going to be a chance to go to this great music, art, nature event and have the first only Heathen-only camp. So not only are you going to get to enjoy this event, you're going to enjoy it with a whole bunch of other heathens. So if you're in the area or you are going to plan on going or you just want information, heathentalk.com, click on events. We've got that up there, as well as registration is now open for Midwest Winter Moot. It's going to be November 2nd through 4th in Oklahoma. So both those information's up there. If you have a Heathen event coming up and you would like to hear us publicize it for free, the form is on the bottom. So please drop us a line, let us know what you have going on. I fixed the Google form issue again, so it's now emailing me to let me know that you've signed up.
Cool.
And I definitely recommend for those of y'all that are into that sort of thing, go check out Cascadia. I know that Kate, along with a couple of my tribes members, have put a lot of work into it. I won't be there, not my cup of tea, but I've heard a lot of good things about it from people who like those sorts of festivals.
Yeah, it does sound pretty fun. And I actually have a friend who's not heathen, but he's super into this kind of stuff, and he travels from here in Little Rock to 8 or 9 festivals a year, and this is one of the ones that he puts aside the money to go to because he says it's just such a great time.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people who have gone to it, and nobody's ever said it wasn't worth the money they spent.
Yeah.
So.
And we can at least testify that the camp area is really nice.
Yeah.
And, it's a really good facility, so.
And a lot more people, they're taking over the whole grounds for it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Because that place is huge.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people show up to it, and from the various pictures and stuff I've seen, just the pictures alone make me kind of want to pay the entry fee just to go sightseeing. I mean, it's just the elaborate setups people have, the elaborate costumes, it's all just really great looking.
It isn't, as Kate said, it is indeed a spectacle.
That's a really appropriate word for it, I think.
Yeah. So tonight we are talking about UPG, Unverified Personal Gnosis. This is in my time in Heathenry over the past 10, 15 years, this is probably one of the most, I don't know, it's just a term that just gets thrown out there. It's just basically, people, I want to start out with what it is and comparing it to another favorite term of ours, MUS, which is just made up shit. I know that Toby has some strong opinions. If you kind of want to start out, or I can, talking about just kind of what it is.
All right, so
critiquing it.
They want Toby to start that?
No, okay, Thorin, what is it? Because what I would like to do is at least try to define what we're talking about before we start, like.
Let's define it in at least a somewhat neutral way before we let Toby do it. Because I don't think, sorry, Toby, I don't think your opinion is all that neutral on this one.
No, it's not, absolutely not.
So, UPG, Unverified Personal Gnosis. is exactly what the name implies. It's unverified and in a lot of cases unverifiable. You can't really say that completely about any UPG because you never know what we're going to find in our continued scholarly pursuits. You don't know what's going to come out of anthropology, archaeology, etc., etc. But most UPG, chances are you're not going to see any real confirmation of it at any point in time. Personal is exactly that, and I think that's going to be a huge part of our discussion here tonight, is the personal nature of UPG and why when UPG becomes a problem in some message boards, oftentimes it's the P that is the problem. And then gnosis is, it's just one of those words I don't have a good working definition. Does anybody know a proper definition for that? I know knowledge. How to use it. Just knowledge is
but it's
revealed knowledge.
Yeah, that's
revealed
a good one.
knowledge. There you go.
I was going to say knowledge without necessarily a background.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of those words that it's kind of like porn. I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it.
Okay.
But, you've never heard that term?
Yes, I have. I've heard people talk about heathenry that way.
Well, I think we've talked about heathenry that way.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so UPG is just a belief that you have as it relates to your religion that is personal to you, it's unverified or unverifiable, and it's just a bit of knowledge that you have.
So I'm going to bring up a really common, and I think probably not super sacred UPG that a lot of people in Heathenry have as an example, because I figured this one is not nearly the sacred cow, and that is what does Odin have missing. That is there's no, as far as I am aware, in my years and years of being around, I've never, there's no actual source that says he's missing his left eye or he's missing his right eye. However, there are people with very strong opinions about what eye it is, with no other thing other than it's pure belief. And like I said, I picked that one because I know a ton of people who have an opinion on it, and so it's not pretty easy to talk about. And the fact of the matter is, I could believe it's the left, Thorin could believe it's the right. Neither one of us can back that up.
Honestly, that's one of the best examples you could have brought up, simply because, especially if we're talking about UPG, mostly because UPG is often a problem in discussion. That's a great example because it's something we don't know. We probably can't know it. And but there are so many people out there who do have a ridiculously strong opinion on it and do not have a problem whipping that opinion out and waving it in your face.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of think I'm odd that I don't have a super strong opinion on it. I mean, if I had to draw it, I would, I have ideas, but it's not like, oh, well, it must be this one, because, I don't know.
I don't think you're odd for not having a strong opinion on it. You're just showing that you've been strongly influenced by a lot of recons.
Why is that?
I've never met a recon with a strong opinion on which eye Odin's missing, because
pushing. It's literally pushing. It's the egg. It's fighting a war between two islands over which side you crack an egg on.
You laugh about this, but someone that we all know has a pretty strong opinion on it because he wrote a blog post about UPG and included it. I'm just gonna say, I don't know if he's listening.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Our friend Kevin.
Oh, I sorry, Kevin, I didn't read that one.
For
in all fairness, I don't read half of Toby's either.
But I mean, it's really, even now, if you look at the IRC, you've got people, left eye, right eye, south-facing, I love that one, south-facing eye. But I think that sometimes there are pieces of knowledge that we have that we feel, to me, UPG is these kind of spiritual knowledge that I have that I feel profoundly certain about for no good reason.
But this is, let's talk I want to focus in on the eye thing because I was very dismissive by calling it Lilliputian, and I still think it's Lilliputian. I think it's also dangerous, and because the eye, worrying about which eye Odin has missing, is worrying is not is missing the forest for the trees. There's a very specific reason why Odin is called the One-Eyed, and it has to do with a very early, very ancient aspect of his nature, and it's talked about in the One-Eyed God. It's about finding the leader of the Manabunda. The leader of the Manabunda, who becomes the god, embodies the god, has one eye because he only the one eye is part of the game that he has lost or won to be chosen as the god.
Okay, but at the same time, if you're, say, our friend Sam Flegel, and you are depicting Odin artistically, that's important to you as an artist. If you're someone who is depicting that, making that choice is kind of important. And the fact of the matter is, I find the Odin eye thing to be pretty much something that heathens like to get drunk and debate about, because if there's nothing we're really good at, it's getting drunk and debating about things. And so the debate to me has always been casual. I've never actually been around somebody who's like super gung ho, I'm right, you're wrong about Odin's eye. It's all just, oh man, no, it's the right one, it's the left one, And then you drink and you come up with ridiculous reasons. And it's awesome. And it's bonding. But, that's just me.
There are plenty of topics to get there, and there is that safety and wild ass philosophy conversation that comes about 3 cups in while you're sitting around a fire.
Yeah.
There's definitely a point to that. I just think that the specificity of needing a doctrinal designation for why Odin has which eye he's missing will prevent people from actually doing the research to figure out why he's missing an eye in the first place.
I disagree with you on that completely, because I think it's very rare that there are people who have this doctrinal need. It's more along the lines of, oh man, when I see and I'm gonna totally crib this from Kevin's essay. When I see somebody who has Odin's eye missing the blank eye, which is not the eye that I see it in my mind's eye, it just looks weird and wrong. That to me is all it is. And I think that it's a good example of UPG, because it's just something that no matter what your opinion is on it, we don't know, we're never going to know, and it's just a matter of, I hate to say personal preference, but that's really what it comes down to in that kind of aesthetic thing.
I disagree. I think if you, and this is the part I hate about, this is another example of why I hate UPG, because now we're just talking, we've gotten into a debate on whether or not which eye is important, and we're not talking about the actual things that we want to talk about. We're following a rat hole, and I'm not saying that this is anyone's problem. I'm just saying that this is another example of why this is such an annoying topic.
Well, but I picked that particular example for a reason, but the fact of the matter is, UPG is, here's the thing, although in the research that I've done, UPG is pretty much something we started, maybe. It's pretty much traceable to polytheistic reconstructionism, the term. Mm-hmm. Although actually the first time it was in print was in a Wiccan book by Catherine Davis, I think's her name. I don't know, I've read them actually. They're actually pretty decent textbooks. And so, but there's some kind of debate where exactly it started. But the idea of the idea of this kind of revelation is not unique to us.
No, and I like
And
that you
that's
use
something
the
I want to bring up.
yeah. I like that you use the term revelation, because to me, I think that's we should stop ghettoizing the idea of personal revelation or of divine revelation, and simply labeling it UPG as a way of dismissing it.
Now I have a question here. Why do you choose to use the phrase ghettoized? Because I cringe when you use that.
Because
It's such a loaded term
it is
in
a
a
loaded
bad
term.
way.
But a ghetto, the
Uh-huh.
original ghetto, was
Mhm.
a quarter of Rome that was walled off, where the Roman and this is the medieval Romans, so the Pope would put all the people that weren't Christian, mostly Jews, and he kept them all there where he could see them, and they had to live in very cramped quarters and with in very bad conditions. It's it's a terrible place to be, and yet people go there.
So then, I mean, but at the same time, this is a phrase that if you go by kind of accepted thought, UPG is our word, it's our concept as a cultural movement. Um, it is a way to it is a way to say, I don't have anything to back this up, but, and then you start coming into you start coming into kind of these discussions, and then it kind of, it grows from there as a spiritual thought. And I think that sometimes we are, I don't know, it's a hard topic for me because on the one hand, I don't have issues with the term UPG. I've been around heathenry quite a long time. It's been used the entire time I've been heathen, and it hasn't been until I would say the past 2 years that I've seen people getting all kind of cuckoo crazy about it. And while, and acting like, oh, this is so terrible. And, and I think that, I don't know, especially to call it ghetto eyes, it just, I don't know, it sounds elitist and it makes me uncomfortable
Well,
because
it
that
is
phrase
elitist. I am
is,
elitist. I'll own that till the day I die. It completely is. But I think that UPG had a purpose earlier on, where we didn't have a whole strong body of knowledge, and we've got these theories, and what really UPG, like the idea of UPG should be, hey, I've made this connection in my brain. I've connected these two disparate things. I think this might take this might be true, and if it is true, then I will find the truth somewhere. I will find it out there either through strong research or practical application. At which point, it's just gnosis.
and I think very much when it comes to this stuff, and as much as the internet has given so much to heathenry, this is the one. This kind of stuff is the, I don't know. The internet just seems to shit all over it.
Well,
I feel like people try to use the internet as a venue to discuss it when that's not the appropriate venue. The appropriate venue is with, people you're actually close to, people you trust, your tribe, your family, your best friend, not your, uh, not the the random person on Facebook you're yelling at.
Yeah. Oh,
Which
absolutely.
I picture every conversation on Facebook as yelling at this point.
So, if I can, I think, you're both kind of right, believe it or not. I guess now, hold on, let me go back and be properly heathen about that. You're both wrong. But you're both wrong because you're both right. UPG is a ghetto. I'm going to go solidly with Toby on that one. However, it wasn't always, but not for the reasons Toby thinks it wasn't always. I think it still has a place. The problem is it's been turned into a ghetto by the way it's been used. Once upon a time, UPG was something that was used to discuss either that extremely rare sort of revelation that we talked about early on, but more often of conclusions that were arrived at without necessarily being able to immediately identify the things that led you to those conclusions. For example, we've talked about on here before that I am in agreement with the concept of the soul complex, or the multi-part soul. Once upon a time, that was UPG for me because I couldn't have told you at all where I came to that conclusion on. The reality was I came to that conclusion because I had spent years reading a crap load of things, and somewhere along the lines, all the information had coalesced in my head into a proper idea. But I couldn't have told you that when I first started professing that as part of my ideology. The problem that has turned it into a ghetto is that people no longer use it to describe those two things. People now use it to describe what we hinted at earlier, MUS, or made-up shit, that they don't want to be challenged on.
It's
become...
I'm watching people do this thing, and people are starting to do the same thing with tribal Thu, or basically it comes down to people try to you're always going to have somebody, though. I mean, 10 years ago you had somebody saying, Loki wears a sparkly tutu, that's my UPG, and guess what? It just is. I mean, you're always going to have those people trying to find a way to get around whatever it is you're saying, to be able to say what they want and not be challenged. I mean, that's just life. That's the internet.
Well, yeah, and you're right. You're right when you say that people are starting to use the word Thu in the same way. And I was just going to point out that Thu is going to become a ghetto, just like UPG is.
Okay, guys, can we come up with another term other than ghetto? Because I'm going to be
I don't
completely
see the
honest with
reason
you.
to.
Because ghetto is an incredibly racially charged term in the United States, and I don't think that it holds the same meaning now. I think that it's not. It doesn't have that same meaning, and I feel like it's not an appropriate word choice. Every time you guys use it, I cringe because it's not it means something so different in our society.
Do you have a suggestion for another word? Because honestly, I can't think of a word that's more apt of a description than that.
Quarantine.
That
Doesn't
is
really do
antiseptic. I mean, I could call it a slum. I could call it a pit. I could call
it a slum. Can we use
but
slum?
The idea is it's segregated, correct?
It's a sewer. It's a
sewer.
septic tank.
Sewer is good. I like sewer.
Sure, we'll go with that. Because it really needs to be pointed out that it's a bad neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's a place that people get locked into and can't figure out how to get out of. And I don't want to go into the entirely other politically charged thing of if they only put in enough work, because I know that doesn't quite work. With that's where the analogy gets stretched. But
it is a terrible place to be, and it is systemically hard to get out of. I mean, it is, and that's why I chose the term, because once you're there, you are stuck.
With that reasoning, I can accept. It's just prior to that, it just made me it made me uncomfortable for all the wrong reasons. if that makes any sense.
I can see
There's a
why you would be
value
uncomfortable
judgment
with
there.
it. But,
Like I think it's important to talk out these terms sometimes, and I think it's a good idea to do that openly. There is a value judgment in that term. Like
what doesn't to me, it's an issue of the fact that ghettos in this country, in the United States, for those of you who, in my country where I'm from, especially in the South, are predominantly African American or Hispanic. They're probably a minority. And we have enough problems in this religion with racist as it is. I don't want to encourage them. So that's why I am, like I said, and I admit, I have a knee-jerk reaction sometimes to what can be considered racially charged terms when they are brought up in heathenry, because where I am and the people I encounter, I have to be on guard for that, because it is not an unusual thing for me to, we had a guy show up, very open, proud, hey, I'm a racist. Well, yeah, congratulations. Show me what you want me to say to that, but
the racist is in the ghetto. That's the thing for me.
We could call it the trailer park.
But I'm from the trailer park is a ghetto. But anyway, I think we've talked about this issue here, and covered it about as well as we're going to be able to cover it and still maintain topic.
Well, the point, so what I want to kind of cross this over to, though, is the concept of, so what UPG was, or what ideally it should be in a perfect world. And there's the concept of Epiphany, and specifically, I'm not talking about the Christian concept or the Christian holiday. I'm talking about more of the James Joycean, I forget how he defined it. I have it in my notes here. That's basically a sudden spiritual manifestation, whether from some object, scene, or event, or memorable phrase of mind. The manifestation being out of proportion to the significance or strictly logical relevance of what produces it.
Mm-hmm.
With the idea being, and like I think that comes very close to how we described UPG in an ideal world.
Yeah, except, go ahead.
Except I would argue that Epiphany and Revelation and all these things are not common. Whereas UPG seems very, I can't, whether you use the term or not, there's not a single Reconstructionist, and not just heathens, Kemetics, Novaromas, Hellenics, there's not a single one of them that doesn't hold at least one or two UPGs.
The question is, where do they hold them? And I think that's the important part to this.
Yeah, do they hold them close, or do they...
Well, I'm simply mean that, doesn't have them. And that's the thing. There are things that I believe that are UPG that there are probably less than 5 people that know them. And those are pretty much all members or in-laws, as I call them, to our tribe. Because we sit down and have these discussions. We have a weekly group that meets, study group, and we talk about these things. And it's not something that I'm going to post, but when I was a baby heathen, oh God, I post so many of this stupid shit to the Troth mailing list back in the early 2000s, and I apologize to every single one of you that had to read it. But, that is kind of how it works. We have this, it's not something I'm going to post on Reddit. I'm not going to post it on Facebook. Heck, I'm to the point right now where I don't post anything on Facebook, but that's beside the point.
I don't. I wouldn't even write it down. I'm
a journaler, so I do write it down because my brain. But that's a personal preference of my brain.
Yeah. The thing about the thing that I've been trying to communicate about the what's happening in UPG is that because we do not call it for what it is, a revelation or I like the term revelation because a revelation reveals, And if you've had a true revelation, you're revealing a true thing, or you're revealing that you're an idiot. So I prefer the term revelation. I've used the term mysteries in the past because they are mysterious. You can't really explain them, and when you try, like I have had the reason I'm here today, the reason that I'm still a heathen, the reason that I travel as much as I do, that I did my that I went through thraldom, that I worked into my Theod, is because of something that happened to me. I have told one person what happened to me, and when I told the story, it wasn't a big reveal. Like when the definition of epiphany is very spot on. It has an impact that is beyond the what actually happened. I mean, to hear some people talk about it, it's basically a the equivalent of a strange moment where the ever-present I saw two ravens. What I saw two ravens. What does that mean? It means you saw two ravens when you talk about it. But if you turn that into something that feeds into the well, that feeds into the impact of advancing and furthering your heathen growth and the growth of heathens around you, that you actually produce something of value out of it, how am I supposed to tell you that that's just two ravens, dude?
Well,
You're known by the quality of your deeds.
well, I mean, to me, it's it's a it's it's a situation where, okay, you saw two ravens, but every day shouldn't be full of saw two ravens moments.
Mm-hmm.
These if these things happen frequently, they lose their profoundness. So, and I think that okay, so I'm gonna, and this is gonna sound a little judgmental, but only because I am critiquing who I was here. I think that in some degree, when you are coming into this with UPG, you have, especially with people who are super eager to share, they are seeking to fit in, they're seeking validation, they need to feel special. And that's a product of the overculture. Take a drink, you wanna. And and I think part of it's also of the isolation of a lot of heathens, because although it's much better now than it was 10, 15 years ago, the fact of the matter remains there's a lot of heathens with no one to learn from. Oh, look, it's the soapbox Lauren gets out all the time. There's a lot of heathens that have no one to learn from and a lot of heathens that aren't willing to teach. But that's neither here nor there. Point being, I see a lot of it. You rarely see, like, I'm going to use Reddit as an example right now. Rarely do I go on Reddit and see someone who I know by username who posts at least, moderately or even infrequently, but over a pretty good term. Rarely do you ever see that person ask about a dream or vision interpretation or all that. It's always somebody who is brand spanking new, who is, who is trying to, I feel like a lot of times it's just somebody trying to fit in to the community is a lot of what, and then they learn this term UPG. And all of a sudden they think UPG is a get out of jail free card. Well, that's just
a real problem.
And the thing is, though, I just don't know if we say, okay, well, we're gonna, if we shift the terminology, just like how we've shifted from Asatru to Heathenry over the past 10 years, eventually, I feel like we're playing a shell game instead
I agree 100%.
Instead of, oh, we're gonna call it a revelation now, or we're gonna call it this, instead of, once again, reclaiming it to borrow from other movements.
That's not. I'm not opposed to that, but I think that also at some level, that's what I'm trying to do.
But you
reclaim
can't.
the liturgical language that has like actual meaning, rather than come up with a new term, which is what we did with UPG. We call it two things. We call it revelation and synthesis.
So, okay, synthesis I hate, and I hope you never say that word again because I work in corporate America, and that is
Too
the
bad I
single
used
most
the.
overused word on
That
the
is just
planet.
too bad. Well, you already stopped us from using one word. You're not going to stop
Oh,
us from using another one.
oh, I know. I'm just saying that's just one of those terms that working in corporate America, you're just like, oh God, I must be in another team building workshop to
Well,
hear
yeah.
synthesis.
Well,
It's
it's all right.
Not
Let's
using
make
synergy.
synergy. Yeah.
let's make Toby twitch, and we can call it kernel compiling or something.
But no, but looking at that, okay, so here's another question then. Why aren't we trying to look for a more authentic term? I'm going to play I'm going to play a little bit of the devil's advocate here. Why are we not trying to, within terms like we have like Thu and Frith, why are we not striving to find a term that is more culturally significant than revelation, which, like many other terms, can have very, you know, I feel to a degree can be a very Christian term.
If you got one, I'm open to hearing it.
Yeah.
I don't know, and that's the thing. That's why I'm asking. I feel like it's got to be there. We've just not. It's just not.
That's a fair thing, but then I tend to use my language shifts. As I learn more, my language shifts. I used UPG for years. I think that revelation is a better term. Do I think it's the final term? You're probably right. There's probably something that we would know. For example, there's the idea of shield is a great one that was recently the topic of a conversation. Shield is the debt. What you don't pay shield, you pay a boot. The boot is the remedy, and so the old English remedy for a sick field, the acre boot, is a way to remediate a problem. So, and our language shifts as we learn more. We're 40 years into a religious revival, or a religious defining for ourselves what this religion means. Um, it takes hundreds of years. It takes 1,000 years between 500 AD, when the Christians kind of solidified their dogma with the major councils. There were several that have come on since then, but the big ones, the really big ones, were done about 500 AD. And 1500 AD, when we had the first major reform movements of the Christian church, was 1,000 years. And it took 500 years for, it took 1,000 years of progression and evolution for people to immediately start going, this isn't what we should be doing. We should be moving forward in a different direction. And the idea of Hegelian dialectics. Here's this word, you have thesis, and you have antithesis, and then you have synthesis, meaning that I propose an idea will come up to fight it, and the two will come together and will actually boil out and strike together to come up with the next thesis.
I guess to me, part of the issue and the thought process is very much trying to come up with, we. I don't know. I guess it's the difference between the big C and the little C community, and that's where I would like to see there be a movement towards, whether it's, whatever it is. I think that there is a place there to have there's got to be somewhere, and it may be a forgotten term, um, that we may not discover. But I feel like there has to be something there that's not revelation or epiphany or one of those words to describe it. I feel like there's something within the, we said we may never find it, but I feel like there's something that will, that was, I just feel like there had to have been something, some sort of term, some sort of idea out there.
Well, personally, I think that trying to find another term is a waste of fucking time. UPG works fine. I understand not wanting to use words like revelation just because they are somewhat loaded terms because of Christianity, obviously, especially Protestant Christianity at this point. But there may be a day that another word does come along and completely, for reasonable reasons that make sense, time supplants UPG. But I think looking for another word and making a big deal over the term when the term is perfectly descriptive as it is and has been in use for quite a while now and is well understood by most people is a waste of fucking time.
See, if we think that terms are loaded, that's because we have lots of baggage that we have to deal with. The term itself, like a person who has no Christian baggage, doesn't exist. But let's play a thought exercise and assume that a person who has no Christian baggage and has no concept of the Christian doctrine of revelation.
We brought somebody in from Mars.
Yeah. And you tried to explain to them the difference between revelation and UPG. I sincerely think that person would go, well, revelation is more accurate to what you're trying to describe. UPG is trying to do two things at once.
I think that here is the problem with that, Toby, is that it's not my baggage. It is societal baggage. And that's where it gets its overculture baggage. And actually I want to tie this back to UPG because I think this is actually a very important point to make. One of the reasons I think UPG gets overused and misused, and even revelation or epiphany, whatever you want to call it, is that first of all, in the heathen worldview, the gods are not omniscient or omnipresent, which, to slow down that for people who don't know those terms, the gods are not already here, always here, and always know everything. You can't, it's not like how relationship with the divine is defined in other traditions, mostly Abrahamic, but there are some other ones where their gods are omniscient, omnipresent. It's not like that. So to have this kind of divine revelation with no real work or ritual behind it doesn't sit well with me, because I think that a lot of those people are carrying over very mainstream culture ideas about how the divine communicates.
So I'm trying to figure out a way to put this. Me always reaching for the analogy. I'll go with the comparison this time. Let's go with the word frith. Why do we bother with the word frith?
It is the best word for the concept that we're trying to communicate.
Because it's communicating an entire concept with a single word, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we use it because there isn't another word that communicates that whole concept, right?
Right.
Otherwise, we would use the existing word. So, right. So, revelation in modern context communicates an entire concept beyond what the word strictly means. And in its way, it's similar to Frith. Granted, Frith is one that we've dredged up from the ages and are trying to beat that concept into people to associate with that word. So it's kind of coming from the reverse direction. But
I think your comparison is like what your idea is valid. I think your comparison isn't valid, and for the simple reason that Frith is what we're trying to do is not we're trying to find the best term that encapsulates a single concept, and Frith is more than peace. So we're looking for a term that fits around more than just the peace aspect. Otherwise, we could just use peace.
Right.
The concept of revelation is less or specific to what we're trying to communicate here, and there's a lot of baggage that's attached to it. So there's value in cutting away the baggage as opposed to finding another term that encapsulates everything. I really want to separate, like in people's minds, the difference between a revelation, meaning something that is a divinely inspired knowledge, and what is or what is true or maybe not true synthesis, meaning that I am pulling disparate pieces of information, like what you're talking about with your soul complex, which I don't agree with. But, and I only say that I don't agree with it because we get yelled at for being an echo chamber.
I don't completely agree with it. I think you are partially right.
But the concept that I'm getting here is that was a synthesis, but we use the term UPG for it, and we're muddying our philosophical and theological concepts by trying to slam two very different ways of thinking about the world or discovering the world into the same word. And that's what really makes me mad about it. I mean,
well, I'm saying when I mentioned earlier, I said I used to use the word UPG for it. I no longer do because it's no longer unverified. Yeah, it's not necessarily a fact. I'm not going to try to state that, but it can be backed up with scholarship. So it took the U and the P out of the G, and so I no longer use that term. It's
induction actually is the I think the proper term, and I may be getting that wrong. I always get the N and D mixed up.
I'm not going to argue with you on that one. But the point I'm making is that when I used the word term UPG to apply to that, it was because at the time, to me, it was. And that's another reason why I don't think revelation is the proper term for the whole that we are encompassing within the term UPG.
But I'm trying to tell you that there are two different concepts that we are muddying the waters together. Like what you had was not gnosis, it was synthesis. It was you had looked at the world, came up with a theory based on a bunch of reading and knowledge and stuff that you've put together, rightly or wrongly.
Right.
And you basically adopted this belief based on that inductive reasoning.
And okay, so I think that is super important to and I think so here is my problem with very, very specifically revelation, as I've molded over in my head. To me, there's I don't know. It's like there's a certain level of I feel like there's this missing gap here between how I would apply it in, say, other tribalistic polytheistic religions. Almost like a mystery. But if you look at mystery traditions, there is an initiation, there is an action. It's there's more to it than just this aha, which is more from Epiphany than Revelation. If that makes any sense. I just feel like there's more to, there's more to it than there is, if you look at, things like to take from the Shawnee, because that's one of the only Native American tribes I know a whole bunch about. There are certain ceremonies to have those revelation that are, there are, sweat lodge and that kind of stuff. So it's just an issue where I feel like it's not just something that happens. There's work, there's preparation, there's spiritual discipline that goes into it.
I think it's all ritual work is designed to reenact that moment of spontaneous epiphany or revelation or hierophany that is the source of all sacred traditions. Whether it's I'm going to show my baggage here, but whether it's Simon on the road to Damascus or Abraham in his tent in the desert or any other traditional start to a religion, you have a hierophany or a spontaneous epiphany. Everything else we do is to recapture that moment. I firmly believe that there's a reason why our sacred places are in the wilds, and that we build around those discovered places.
I just want to take a moment, Toby, because this is something that I will probably never get to do again. But it was not Simon on the road to Damascus; it was Saul. And I'm sorry. That's going to be probably the only time I'll ever get to correct you. So I enjoy it.
I think she's right, Toby.
She's right.
It's been a while.
I am right.
Yeah, it's been a while. Man,
I did 10 years of Bible drill. I know my shit.
So how's that for a segue away from the argument we've been having into something that's more practical?
So I did post up, if you got questions, you can post them on the IRC. You can hit us up on Facebook if you're listening live, Twitter, all that's fun stuff, or, just harass one of us. But because it is rolling up on 10 o'clock Central, which I'm not even going to talk about what time it is in other time zones because they don't matter. So definitely we want to have your questions.
8 o'clock civilized.
And I do want to get to, I'm going to completely lead us off because I feel like we're just going to keep going in circles, and I really want to get us to what Matt brought up on the IRC. And I'm going to paraphrase you there to kind of get it more into a question. So let's talk about when can you discuss UPG and when should you just keep shit to yourself? And that is, that's pretty much what he said, so I'm just going to lay it there. I will let Thorin start because Toby and I have been talking way too much.
Well, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that there's really only one scenario in which I think it's appropriate to publicly discuss UPG. And let me go ahead and clarify. By publicly, I mean outside of your... I'm going to go ahead and use tribe here. I was going to say outside of your web of frith, but that really doesn't necessarily compute because not everybody in that's going to be a heathen. So I'll go with tribe. The only time I think it's really terribly appropriate to discuss UPG outside of tribe is if you are specifically trying to have it challenged. If you have had this UPG, if you've had this revelation, but you don't know if it's worth a shit, or if you're just making shit up and you're saying shit to yourself. That's when you go find people that know shit, and you tell them you're UPG, and you open yourself up to criticism and make them tell you why it's wrong or why it's not.
And I will say that it's probably in your best interest to. This is after you've exhausted the resource of your tribe. This is like a, it's kind of like tech support. It's like after you've exhausted that first tech, and it's an escalation, because most of the time, I would say there's of course, granted, I'm blessed. Totally admitted, I have a Ben in my tribe, but 90. I can. Maybe 99.9% of the time, this is if you are actively involved in a tribe. And to be completely fair, I ask my husband sometimes, and my husband's not a heathen, my husband's an atheist, but my husband's really good at deconstructing my thoughts. I think that the first place you go is your inner, absolutely, your inner circle, as I call it, because of my whole concentric circle of Frith. But anyway. I think that another time that I think that's really the only time that it's appropriate. And I do not think that, I think that, and this is me being judgmental McJudgmentson, this is the only kind of conversation that you can have. This is the kind of conversation you need to have face to face. Or, I will admit we have some of these conversations on Google Hangout in my tribe but we can see each other. We're looking at each other. It's not over text. You can pull out the nuance in what someone's actually saying versus what you're implying. It needs to be a voice conversation, not just typing at each other.
I'd agree to that. I think the appropriate time to discuss UPG is when you're not seeking validation, but rather what is your end game? Are you sharing UPG in order to access validation and praise? Or are you sharing this, whatever it is, whatever we choose to call it, UPG? I'll accede to that for now.
If we're doing a show on UPG, let's just,
It does make it easier.
Yeah.
Or what you're doing seeking to... Maybe you're seeking to confirm it, but the possibility that you are wrong is never far from your mind. And in fact, in every case that I've personally had a moment of that, or of UPG, or that I have been approached by someone with UPG, the times when I have been able to see in the faces of the people that approached me, or that I have approached, felt in myself, has always been, please don't let this be, please let me be wrong, please let me be mistaken, because it's scary. I find it very, very scary. I find it easy when I make synthesis, when I can point and say, here's where I got this piece, and I'm getting this piece together, and when you put them together like this, here's this piece of that, and I have no problem with that. That's easy, even when I'm wrong, even when you can say, hey, look at this, this, and this, and I can go, oh, okay. Typically, I have to go back and mull it over for a while. I'm not perfect. I do get attached to my ideas. But the piece that I think is really important is what is the purpose for your sharing it? Like, if your purpose is good, then it is good to share it. If your purpose is self-serving, you're going to share it anyway, so I don't even know why I'm giving the advice.
I kind of want to bring this into validation, because I think that there are two very different definitions of validation that can be used when it comes to these kind of concepts. There is validation in the sense of, look at me, tell me how awesome I am. And there's validation in the sense of, okay, this is what I think. Am I right? And they're two very different uses of the same word. I think the second is totally appropriate, especially when you're going within the inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
The first is unfortunate, but I can't tell you, God, I've done it so many times, and I can't tell you how many other people, and that's not unique to any of us. And but if you are doing that, you need to sit down and figure out why. And hey, therapy worked for me.
Hey,
we had a comment in the IRC. The difference we're looking for is the difference between validation, meaning that my idea has merit, and gratification. So thanks to Doge Zerker, I know who you are.
Or perhaps the phrase we're looking for is Valhalidation.
Same thing.
I know. Yeah. I just really wanted to say Valhalidation.
It's fair. It's a fun word to say. I'm not
it
gonna
really
lie.
is. It really is. So once again, if you have questions, we will pretend we have answers. You can hit us up with them.
I would say you'll pretend we're right, but you never do.
No, you never do.
So there is a question from Ashley in the IRC, and I think it's important because we've been talking about it, and it's she says, what's the difference between UPG and I missed it. Oh well. Where does the line between UPG and cop-out get drawn? And I think that's an important piece. And we've talked a little bit about it, but I think it's absolutely important that UPG is never not up for debate.
Absolutely.
You cannot hide behind those three letters like some sort of magical shield that will prevent you from any kind of criticism or hurt feelings.
If it's not up for debate, you shouldn't have brought it up.
Yep.
That's the difference between UPG and irrational belief. I think that's what it comes down to. And I'm going to quote Matt on IRC because this is great. The key distinction is whether you're open to input or if you're going to throw a temper tantrum at anyone who says you're wrong. And I think that is probably that's it. That is just completely amazing. And I totally stole that.
Shut it all down.
Yeah, and that's it. Sorry, we're done. Yeah. We did have another question here on the IRC, and I lost it because they started talking, and it was actually a good. I know it was a good question. Hang on, let me find it. We're short a producer tonight, so that kind of.
If you asked a question, then feel free to ask it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, and I'm really sad because I saw it and I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. And then we started talking about Ashley's question, and I got, here it is, from Lost Penguin. What is the distinction between validation and verification? Is it solely on the perception of the person asking, or I would add in there, or the person being asked?
I would say that validation is having a bunch of people tell you you're right, and verification is having a bunch of people tell you why you're right.
Or not necessarily that. You could also say why people are not, or why people are you're wrong.
Validation is the feeling you get from being right. Verification is the act of being right. I think or let me put it this way: you can verify something as accurate when somebody else picks it up, uses that piece of knowledge, and has success with it. You say, hey, I think we should do something, like, I don't know, I'm going to pull one right out of my head and say, symbol and doors. And we go and we do it, and then other people experience it, or they see it, and then they choose to adopt the practice yourself. That's verification. sorry, that's the validation piece. That's the piece where you go, okay, now I feel good because I have impact. The verification is simply the hard work of sitting in front of a cross podium outdoors in May and having this long discussion where we hammer out where we're going to have Sumble.
That was a long discussion, predicated by many other long discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So glad I was not involved with that.
I don't want to remember how many hours we put into discussing that.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and I don't bring it up to rub it in Thorin's face, although that's fun. I bring it up because it's an example of where we can talk about things and we can discuss them and we can verify them, but the validation really doesn't come until other people adopt it and are influenced by it. At least for me, that's where I get validation from, is when I can look to the impact that I've had on the practice of my tribe and the practice of those people I consider friends, and be able to say, hey, I'm doing something of value here. Ultimately, my worth, like the actual, like the inner worth, is entirely determined by the ordeals that I undergo and the validation and honor that is attributed to me by the people that matter in my life, which is my tribe.
And that's I think is important when you look for, it's not, when it comes down to it, what I have as my beliefs. I'm sorry, guys.
We're not going to ignore that.
No. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, and it's one of the reasons I personally have pulled back from a lot of online heathen discussion, is because what I would say 99.9% of other heathens think about what I believe really doesn't matter. What matters to me is what those that I am close to, those who I truly call friend or inner circle, and that's why I can sit down and have a lively debate with Toby and Thorin about topics in heathenry, because at the end of the day, I respect their opinions. But the fact of the matter is, if it's just two people getting into a pissing match on name your social media of choice, it doesn't really do anything for me. Sorry, guys. I mean, I used to really enjoy it, but now I'm just kind of like, you know what? That's great, and y'all can just keep debating and all, but at the end of the day, what affects what I practice, not even what I believe, because I'm going to completely lay this out here. What I believe is irrelevant to what my tribal beliefs are, and what I believe is irrelevant to what my tribe does. So there's a party going on.
I would say that it comes and it goes. I have the moments where I feel, I find the give and take of debate and honing those ideas to be particularly rewarding, and typically it's not the dirt smacking, it's not the no, you're wrong, here's your 32 sources and you smell bad, and your mom addresses you funny. It's the, hey guys, this is the idea that I'm thinking about, and then we hash it out. That's what's most rewarding for me. I think there's a value in maintaining community standards, and I think there's value in just being out there standing up for what you believe in. But it does drain you. It is a net drainer of emotional energy.
I think that's really all in how you go about it and how you look at it. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and because I love my analogies so much, I'm going to use one here that might be a tiny bit insulting for some of the groups that I choose to engage in those debates in sometimes. There's a method of knife sharpening that I learned a while back that is probably the best method of knife sharpening I've ever learned, but it really takes a lot of skill and practice. And when I haven't done it in a while, or especially when I was first learning, do you think I'm getting out my best kitchen knives to do it on? No. We've actually got a bucket of crap kitchen knives that we've picked up at Goodwill to practice on. So sometimes going to those places where you know that the quality of the people you're debating with might not be really all that terribly high, and trying to slap a little bit of knowledge on them with your good debate skills is you're practicing on the shitty knife so that when it comes time to do it for real, you're not going to screw it up.
Yeah, I can see the analogy. I don't. It's not why I do it. I participate simply because I think it's important to plant a flag. And
well, yeah, I mean
sometimes-
that's part of it. You know, if I if I'm in a thread like that and there's 20 shitty knives in the thread and one or two of them comes out really nice and sharp and useful, even though they were from the dollar grab bin at Goodwill, then they're a nice, sharp, useful knife now.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
But let's move on before I stretch that analogy any further.
At the end of the day, though, if you don't, I'm a fan of, take what works and leave the rest. And if you're like me, and I have a limited amount of time, and more importantly, I have a limited amount of screen time. I get eye fatigue problems badly. So, it's kind of like I find more, I pick my venues, and that's it. And beyond that, it's okay. Because I argue with you guys every week, and it's the best. It's much more fun, and I argue with my tribe every week. So
Yeah,
those are the best
fair.
3 hours of my week right there. So something else that I think people are kind of touching on, and I want to kind of touch on because I feel like it ties into the verification. Which I'm going to totally start using verification and not validation. Because verification is much more accurate, of UPG. How do you find somebody, if you are somebody who is not fortunate enough to be in a tribe? I'm gonna throw this, even though I know the answer and I know what I'm gonna say. How do you choose people to bounce these things off of, to talk to?
Tell you the guy who says no the first time you ask him.
That sounds very Jewish. No offense. It's very. We will not let you.
There are tribes that have been around for 5,000 years.
Yes. To me, this is gonna sound so funny, but is this somebody who will bail you out of jail? Because that's the level of trust I need to have in somebody to have these discussions.
Nah, there's plenty of people I'll have those discussions with. I wouldn't expect to bail me out of jail.
Not that you would expect, but if push come to shove, would they bail you out of jail?
I can think of a few people that I have these debates with on a regular basis that I wouldn't, if push came to shove, they probably wouldn't, because I'm not their people.
Well, and to me, I'm much more, for most things, I guess I'm more reserved now because of my history of oversharing, that I do tend to skew the other way. I will say that find somebody who you feel is doing it right, get to know them, and only then ask. Don't just randomly message one of us and say, hey, I had this UPG that Thor's hammer is made out of plastic. What you think? My answer
I will tell you yes, simply because you do not want me to answer that question.
And I have gotten those. Usually it's not emails. Usually it is messages on Facebook or on Reddit. I've gotten some messages. I'm just like, oh god. What do you think? I go very Socratic method on them. Why do you feel that way? Bless your heart. And without actually ever giving him an opinion, it's great. Except maybe bless your heart.
Yeah, say, was it that bad? Damn.
Some of them have been, like, I have gotten some messages from people on speaking of this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to the gods, um, who I genuinely fear are mentally
Ill.
troubled.
Just go with ill. It works.
Ill. Mentally troubled. Unwell. And so, when people are telling me all about the rocket ship to Venus where Odin was the pilot, and I'm just like, oh, sometimes I get to the point that I'm just like, I don't know what to say. Oh, okay, that's nice. Which, by the way, if somebody ever trying to drag you into a political discussion you don't want to get into, if you just say, oh, that's nice, it completely fucks with their head, and then they don't try it anymore. It's great.
Say, so, when it comes to that, bringing it back around to the original question, it comes down to trying to, who do you talk to when you don't have tribe to try to learn these things and try to figure out which of your ideas are decent and which of them are complete bullshit. Mm-hmm. My tribe is barely older than this podcast, and it's the first proper tribe I've ever been a part of. I haven't had tribe for most of my heathen life, and yet I've gotten to the point where I can reasonably speak in a semi-educated manner on the subject, and it's because I find the kind of people to talk to that are not going to immediately tell me I'm right because my feels. The people who are perfectly willing to tell me, no, you're wrong, and then wait and see how I react to that. And the biggest secret, it's not hard to find those people. And it's not hard to find the people that are going to tell you you're wrong and be able to tell you why. It's actually harder to find somebody on the other side of that equation who's willing to accept it and deal with it and to learn from it. I can list off any dozen places just online that you can go and find these people that know their shit and are willing to tell you when you're right and when you're wrong, and they're willing to list the reasons for you and give you all the sources you can go back and look at and tell you all the experts' names, etc., etc. And it's a lot easier to find those people than it is to find the people that are willing to just say, oh, okay, and go back and look at those sources they're being handed and come to a correct conclusion and then grow a little bit and be willing to admit that they had a stupid idea. I've had a lot of stupid ideas. We've said it before, every one of us on this show can say we spent more time doing it wrong than we've spent doing it right. Mm-hmm. But it's being willing to understand that you're going to spend more time doing it wrong than you are doing it right that makes the big difference. So it's less about who do you go to, and it's more like who are you, and who are you going to be.
Like I said, the impact. The impact is everything. You are your deeds. What you do with your UPG is really what is important. Not that you have it. Everybody has strange ideas. Everybody has these synthesized things. Everybody thinks they're special, but only a few people go out and prove it. Be one of them.
So, one more question I want to pose to you guys. We got about 5 minutes left. How do you tell the difference between a harebrained idea and something that's actually... I don't want to talk about synthesis. I want to talk about epiphany or revelation, whatever you have. How do you define the difference? How do you differentiate those two personally? And I kind of want to know personally because it's going to be a little different from everywhere.
Smell test. Does it stink? I mean, does it? If you look at an idea, determine real quick, from what you know and from what educated people that have said in the past, does it match everything else that you know of as correct? If it doesn't fit into the whole, then you're looking at a piece from a different puzzle.
I spent 3 months last year researching Egyptian rope stretching, which is a way of creating right angles. And
He's not joking, guys. He did.
I wove my own rope, and well, not from individual fibers, but I took a hemp rope and I wove a knotted or an Egyptian rope with no knots in it, and I went and tried it out, and it didn't work, and we threw it away, and that was it. That was it. Do I think the idea is completely without value? No, I learned a lot, and I think there's still something there, but I don't have it, and so it's not going to get used again until I make a qualitative change to that idea.
For me, it's gonna come down to, can I look at this idea, and this is why I write things down, because I also have the problem of I'm starting to develop CRS, and so I have to write these things down. I dissect it. I challenge myself. I become my worst critic on it. And yeah, and then it comes down to the sniff test. Also, I'm doubly hard on anything that I come up with while I'm drunk. Because drunk me is not always the brightest bulb. My discernment goes way down. So, just a thought. We're getting close to wrapping up, guys. I want to give a very special shout out to our friend Jenna. We have received a wonderful bag of coffee that will be going in the Black & Decker for the Java Mall. And thank you for that, as well as the giant box of wool that will be made. You said talking about making the rope, and that reminded me. That will soon be, because I got my drop spindle today, so it's going to be turned into something really cool very soon.
I got a postcard from her. I'm quite happy with it.
She's awesome. I mean, and that's somebody who has gotten out there and done the work, and I'm in awe of her every time I hear what she's up to.
So thanks, Jenna.
Absolutely. If you want to hear more of us, YouTube, we have 51 other videos you could watch. Next week is our 1-year anniversary extravaganza. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to mean, but
we're going to Twitter bomb Josh.
It's going to be awesome. And we're going to talk about what this past year has been like, what it's meant, what we have in store for the future, just all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to reminisce about since Josh is going to still be on hiatus next week, I'm going to reminisce and talk about how Josh totally ambushed me for the first show. And then it basically just turned into all of us, arguing, which is what every episode is.
Sometimes we agree aggressively.
Sometimes.
And remember, folks, because Josh isn't here, you're not the boss of me.
You're doing it wrong.
In stereo. Oh, everybody have a good week.
All right. Talk to you later.